Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here. Behind me I have a 2000 Acura Integra with, it's a GSR. It has a B18C engine code, which means it has the VTEC engine, and that's pretty much what you get with a GSR. They also only come in manual transmissions, by the way, but they do come in 2- and 4-door configurations, so that's kind of cool. I thought I'd do a valve adjustment video on this. I've done valve adjustment videos in the past that you've seen on the F series, the regular B series, and also, what else did we do? Oh yes, we did the J series V6. Most Hondas run a solid valve train. Most other vehicles have hydraulic valve trains, which don't require any adjustment, but Hondas do require periodic adjustment. I've been asked about this a few times because the valve adjustment in this cylinder head is a little unique. In fact, I can't remember exactly, but you're going to need one of these tools. I can't remember whether it's the 12mm version or the 10mm version. As far as the tool numbers go, if it's the 10mm version, it would be, this is a Blue Point tool. Y as in yam, A as in apple, 8895 is for the 10mm version. And for the 12mm version, it is a Yukon Apple 8880. So if it's the 12mm, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've been into one of these. I'll tell you specifically whether it's the 10 or 12mm, and I post that also in the description. I'll see if I can scrounge up a link to a place where you can purchase one of these. But there's no way you're going to be able to use a screwdriver and just a regular wrench like I've shown in other videos, just because the valves themselves are down inside the cylinder head pretty far. It's a pretty straightforward operation, but where you place the feeler gauges and the addition of using one of these tools are the important differences that you'll find in this situation. So why don't we go over to the car and get started. Now I'm just going to raise and support one side of the vehicle. This gives me personally better access to everything I need to get to in order to adjust the valves. Plus I'm a little bit tall, so it's nice to have it up closer to me instead of having to be on the ground doing my adjustment. With as dirty as this engine bay is, it seems counterintuitive to do this, but I'm gonna. This helps protect the body anyway. Plus it makes me feel like I'm doing some kind of surgery. All right, I'll remove the center cover here with the 4 10mm nuts. A little plastic tab here. You can see that, can't you? Yeah. There's a little plastic tab here that you pull up on, and that'll undo that clip. There's another one right here. I'll show you again in a second. But that allows that to come up. That way you don't break the clips. And I just use these 45 angle pliers, and I just hook these plug wires, and it works so nice for me. That's why I do it that way. While you've got your wires out, just check to see if you got any oil on them that could indicate that the valve cover gasket or something else is leaking. There's no oil on these, so we're good. Let's get them out of the way. Still got that same 45. Use that to, it's the fresh air side of the PCV. Move that out of the way. Now I'm going to just remove this bracket, just remove this fastener here, and then flip this up to gain access to the valve cover. Then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then these other 4 in the center. But in addition, I'm also going to remove the spark plugs. It'll make turning the engine over much easier. just inspect the spark plugs when I pull them out. These are like 100,000 mile plugs, and believe it or not, this car only has 84,000 miles on it. These all look normal. Here's a little bit of oil being burned on this, but I'm gonna be honest, this engine, just Honda 4-cylinders in general tend to burn a little oil. That's just how they are. I mean, even brand new, they did this. This is still, in my opinion, one of the best engines that Honda ever made. In fact, in the Type R, they got, I think it was like 199 horsepower out of this thing, and it's 1.8 liters. It's naturally aspirated, so naturally aspirated getting more horsepower than displacement is pretty good. Once again, I got these special pliers, and I just stick them on top of this power steering bracket and up underneath here and wedge it up. Now, be careful, because these little washer grommets kind of things, especially these in the center here, you want to take those off, or else they'll just fall right out. So as those come up, if they try to pop off, just try to keep an eye on them, because if these fall down in somewhere, they usually find some place to rest that is very difficult to locate them again. It's like some law of nature. Yeah, before I flip this over, any of these that are loose are accounted for. And I'm gonna go put this over in the bench, but see, it's just, these are still very pliable, so I will reuse these gaskets. But if these are hard at all and not this rubbery, then definitely replace it. Then there's really no better time to replace like your valve cover gasket than when you're doing a valve adjustment or something like this. So it's not unheard of. But I'm gonna I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm only doing this so that I can make a video for you. I actually asked the owner of this car if I could use this as an opportunity to make a video for you on this valve adjustment. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be doing this. So, in other words, there's no money in the budget for a new valve cover gasket, and I don't feel bad about that, because feeling this gasket, I don't think it's going to be a problem. And it wasn't leaking, as you can see. The engine on the outside is plenty dirty, but on the inside, it's like clean. All right, let's get a look at what everybody's talking about. The B18C cylinder head. And it's cool. It's got the whole VTEC thing. I've got a video just on VTEC. The center lobe is for the VTEC. On this side here, these are the exhaust valves. It's exhaust manifold. And on the opposite side are the intake valves. Yes, there's your intake manifold. The other thing that I can tell you is you need to do this job with the engine completely cold, so make sure it's had plenty of time to cool down. The adjustment is done cold, and as far as what the specs are, it's right up here. On the should be here on the underhood sticker. If it's been a collision, you might not have the sticker, but if you look closely, you'll see that intake valve lash is 17 thousandths, or I'm sorry, that's 0.17 millimeters plus or minus 2 millimeters, and it's exhaust of 0.19 plus or minus 2 millimeters. And there's a spark plug gap if we need it, but those are our adjustments. So we need a 17 and 19 pretty much feeler gauges to do this, and I believe it also says on there cold. Yeah, should be done cold. I don't have a 19, so I'm going to use this 0.20, and that's okay, because remember, it's plus or minus 0.02 millimeters, so we're fine with this. And there's the 17. So as far as what the inches would be, it would be 0.008 and 0.007 for intake and exhaust. The intake would be the smaller, and the exhaust would be the larger, right here. Now here's the other important thing to note. You cannot get down in on these valves to do the adjustment. I mean, I don't suggest you do. I actually suggest that you slide the feeler gauge between the cam lobe and the top of the follower here. So I would, this is how I do it. I put the cam lobe in between these two parts and make my adjustment that way. In addition, these are the 10 millimeter. So this tool is the 10 millimeter, and it's the YA8895 is the number for it. And I'll put a link in the description to where at least I believe you can find one of these. And now comes the part where we need to position the cam lobes so that we can adjust the valves. Probably the easiest way to tell you to do this is there's no marks on the crankshaft or anything for this, but I just turn them and look at the cam lobes, and I'll give you a close-up of what I like to see. But I take a 19 millimeter wrench and I stick it right down on the power steering pulley, and as a result I don't have to put a ratchet through the side or any of that stuff, but I can very easily turn the engine over just by doing that with my 19 millimeter. So now let's see, yeah, looks like cylinder number 3 is coming up. It's just about right. Yep, we're gonna start with cylinder 3, and if you look at my cam lobes, you can see they're pointed just under this ridge on both sides, both that side and over here on the intake side. So this way I know that this cylinder is on the compression stroke right now, and both of these are on the base circle, and that's the most important thing. So the bump on the outside is the actual lobe, and then the bottom part is the base circle of the cam, and that's where you want to make sure you make your adjustment. And the center one does not get adjusted, it's just these outer two. So don't even worry about the center one, because that's the VTEC and it's not even active until VTEC is active. You don't need to make any adjustments here. You just need to make your adjustments here on the outer lobes, on both the exhaust and the intake. So just the outer lobes are all you're worrying about adjusting. Aside from that, there is no adjustment for the center. So, you know, I just want to avoid any confusion there. So as long as you have the outer ones adjusted, you're good. Okay, I've put on a fresh set of gloves, and I'm going to adjust the exhaust on cylinder number 3 first. And I'm just going to slip the feeler gauge, like I said, down in between the cam lobe and the top of the, I hesitate to call it a rocker. And this one actually feels pretty good. Also, this one does too. So I'm actually not going to make any adjustment at all, and that's okay, because really, in a way, you're checking valve clearance. But you can see, hopefully, you can see where I've got that right down underneath the cam lobe, so that in between that and the follower, I guess I'll call it. And you're just looking for a little bit of drag. And I use these long feeler gauges, work great for this. Shorter feeler gauges will work, but I really prefer these long ones because they really allow me to get like right down in there. So now I'm going to go over and swap over and do the intake. All right, now we're on the intake side of cylinder number 3, and this is the 17. And once again, I'm going to slip the feeler gauge down in between the cam lobe and the base circle of the cam and the follower. And once again, slight amount of drag. In fact, that's about perfect. So once again, I'm not going to mess with it. If it's perfect, leave it alone. And in fact, in my experience, a lot of times these are pretty close. It's rare that you'll have to do the adjustment, because you got to get them all even, and that's the most important thing, is to make sure you get everything even. 4-cylinder engines, just by design, do kind of have a rough idle. Just they fire every 180 degrees, so in a way they're kind of handicapped in that respect. If you get these valve adjustments off on all these cylinders, you'll have a rougher idle than you would. But that's mainly what you'll get from this. I mean, if you're looking to cure a performance problem, the only time that really happens is if somebody's gone in and like completely botched the valve adjustment and you go in and you correct it. That's the only time it really solves their performance problems, if they're way loose or way tight, one of those two things. But if you're doing the adjustment for the first time, it's a stock setup, that kind of thing, well, usually right out of the gate you're good. But these engines are old enough now to where the valves have probably been adjusted once before. And as I said, you know, the less the better. But if you do have to do the adjustment, which hopefully along the line somewhere here we will, you just stick the tool down on there like this, knock it loose. I'm glad that's sort of open there. Knock it loose, and then twist it and run it down and get it tight. If I do end up adjusting one, you'll see me do it, but this is what I'll be doing, is I'll just be taking the tool, putting it down on this 10mm nut, and then a screwdriver on top of that. That's why I said that without some sort of special tool, you're not even going to be able to get down on these, because they're buried, as you can see, down inside the cylinder head. You're not going to get down in here to adjust these any other way. Okay, since we just adjusted cylinder number 3, we're going to rotate the engine in a counterclockwise motion, and I should have mentioned that to start with. This engine rotates counterclockwise, not clockwise, so make sure you keep going in the direction of engine rotation. So I probably should have mentioned that before. But the firing order is 1, 3, 4, 2. So if we're on 3, the next one to come up will be 4. So we're going to start looking at the cam lobes on cylinder number 4 to come up. And there they are. See, these lobes just pretty much line up with this gate right here, this brace. Okay, the 17's on the intake. That's a little loose. We'll be able to snug that one up. That one is very, very slightly loose. So, drop the tool down in, loosen, sort of tighten it just a little bit, hold it. Just ever so slight amount of drag. If you really have to pull on it, you've got it too tight. You should almost hear it squeak as it's going through, or feel it. Hear that? Not the truck. That's right where I like it to be. This one could just use just a smidgen. There we go. So good. Now for the exhaust, which was our 19, or in this case 20. That's good. This one's a tough call. I'm trying to decide whether it's loose or not. And I'm just gonna tell you, just err on the side of caution. If they feel a little loose, I almost say leave them a little alone. It's okay if you hear them a little bit, but if they're a little loose, leave them a little loose rather than trying to tighten them. Sometimes you just adjust and adjust all day long and you just get back to where you started. All right, well, we just adjusted cylinder number 4, so firing order 1, 3, 4, 2, this is cylinder 2, will be the next one to come up. Right there. Once again, I want my lobes, just sort of be able to run my thumb over this, be able to just sort of touch the lobes. I'm going to adjust the intakes, or check the intakes, I should say. Now this is too tight. I'm going to loosen that up just a bit. Much better. Also a little bit tight. Still feels a little bit tight there. Not by much, but just enough to Make me think I should just loosen it just a hair more. Yeah, there we go. Valve adjustments are something you develop a feel for. It's not something you're going to pick up right away. You'll probably screw up a couple of times before you get it right. If you don't, you're a genius. But good for you. Really hard to argue with that. That seems right on too. Alright, so we're going to move on. So now that we've done 2, what's next? You remember? That's right, cylinder number 1. 1, 3, 1, 3, 4, 2. So back to 1. There we go. Check my intakes first. Doesn't matter if you check the intakes or the exhaust first, really. It's whatever your preference is. That one's a tough call. Is it loose? If it is, it's only micromillimeters. All right, well, that's all 4 cylinders. However, I would recommend, because of the importance of getting this right, that you just run through them all again. Just recheck them and see if you're on. So I'm gonna do that real quick. I'm just gonna check all 4. So we just did 1. So we're gonna come up on 3. Still reads ever so slightly loose, but I'm going to leave it alone. Okay, we've run through all the valves. I'm calling that done. I suppose I should cover the valve cover reinstallation. Once again, it's probably a good idea to replace this gasket. I'm just not doing it in this particular case because it's still pliable. But I go around the outside. I wipe it down. I also wipe down the surface of the cylinder head to make sure that it's dry and there's no like oil in the gasket or what have you. And by the way, there's like a little part of the gasket that's a little notch right here that it fits into. But one last thing that is pretty much common practice is this is actually Honda Bond. You could use RTV for this also. But just on these corners, we just want to put a little dab of, you know, preferably Honda Bond, but RTV will also work. This is just common in this area, and it's about this much that's used. Oh, that's a little too much. We can bring that over to here. And it doesn't need to be a lot, it's just a little dab. This valve cover's been off a couple of times in the past, I can tell. Probably for other service work, like say a valve adjustment or something of that nature. But once you've done that, you can reinstall the valve cover and reverse it the way you took it off. Don't forget the ground cable. And be careful with these, because if you break these studs, they can be replaced, but I believe they're only available through the Honda dealer because they're special parts. But you don't need to tighten them so much that they break. Just when they bottom out, stop. You're done. Voila. Now I'm guessing you want the payoff on this, and you want to see how well I did with that valve adjustment. I also did the timing belt on this, so that's the reason why I have my funnel. I'm about to bleed the cooling system out. So I'll fire it up for you so you can hear how well I did, or didn't do. Sounds actually perfect to me. All right, now that it's all warmed up, cooling fans have kicked on, you can listen for yourself. We'll do the valve adjustment test. Slight vibration. But I think, all in all, it sounds good. This one I think I nailed. Feel really good about it. Time to wrap it up. And whenever I do these timing belts and valve adjustments, I do the valve adjustment first before I change the timing belt, because during the process I often find that I'll touch the timing belt and have a little bit of oil on my hands. When I do so, I try to keep oil off the timing belt. I don't care if I screw up my old belt, it's not a problem, but I do care if I get oil on my new belt, so I do this valve adjustment first. As far as a video on the timing belt for this engine, I'm actually only going to do part of this because I've already shot and have available a B series timing belt on my website, but I'm going to update it after doing this timing belt, because there's some slight variations between this engine and just a regular Integra engine. And for those of you that are curious about how much horsepower this engine makes, I believe it's somewhere around 140, 145 is what they got out of this. And I think they squeezed the extra horsepower out of this by putting different valves, so lighter valves, that kind of thing. And to be honest, I think they got it by revving it higher, because the red line on this is somewhere around 8,000 or so. Maybe I'm out. I know it's pretty high up. But the Type R engine actually redlines like above 8,000, like not much above 8,000, but the more you rev an engine, the more horsepower you can get out of it. So I think what they did was they lightened up the valve train, and they beefed up the springs, the valve springs and everything, to make sure that, you know, they didn't get valve float or anything like that, which is what you risk when you rev an engine really high. And as a result, that's where they got the extra horsepower from revving it more. So they built it so that it would rev more. I don't think the bottom end is that much different. I think that all the differences as far as between this engine and a Type R engine are in the top end, just an FYI. So if you, say for instance, put Type R stuff in your cylinder head, and you disabled the fuel cut for the red line, made that happen a little bit higher up. Of course, you make it too high, you could scatter the engine. So keep that in mind. But if you get it in the right spot, you'll actually technically have more, well, not technically, you will have more horsepower because you're revving it higher. Just a little tip for you, for those of you tuners out there that want to get into this. But for those of you that just want to do your valve adjustment, smooth out your idle maybe, like I said, that's about the most that you're going to get out of an operation like this, is a smoother idle, or smoother running engine, smoother power delivery. But it's not going to repair a problem unless this is the problem, and it's not often the problem unless somebody's gone in there and done something wrong. So when you go in there, do it right, and hopefully this video will help you achieve that goal. Anyway, I am Eric the Car Guy. You can always find me at EricTheCarGuy.com, and you can also find that timing belt video over there under the V manuals page. Link in the description for that. And if you have automotive questions, I would ask that you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com, type in a couple of keywords that relate to your problem into our search function. It will go through our database, and anything that comes up, anything that pertains to your problem should come up from that search. Also, you can type in your check engine light codes. So you just type in like a P0141 or something like that, and you'll get answers coming up, explanation of the code and all that kind of stuff. Just loads of information over at EricTheCarGuy.com to help you with your automotive repairs. In addition, you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And I close with, be safe, have fun, and of course, stay dirty. And I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.